Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL Podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly. Well, welcome back to the DCL Podcast, your podcast to help you cruise a little bit smarter. And I'd like to welcome back to the show all the way down in Florida. How are you doing today, Christy?
Well, I have a little cold, a little sinus thing. So we're going to see. I feel like I sound weird. So we'll see. But I'm fine. I'm good.
Yeah, no, we'll get through this. It's kind of the fall season's upon us, and it's just that time of year where everybody starts to get those little germs again and stuff like that. So I hope that you feel better here soon, which I'm sure you will be on the mend soon.
Thanks.
Well, we are going to jump into a different cruise topic today because we're going to cover a different cruise line, Christy.
I know, I'm excited.
So today we're going to talk about Holland America, and since most of our listeners are probably more familiar with Disney, a lot of them have cruised on Royal, and I know that you're a fan of Celebrity and like to get people cruising on Celebrity. But just to do a quick background on Holland America, Holland America is a U.S.-owned cruise line, a subsidiary of the Carnival Corporation, headquartered in Seattle, Washington, which is kind of cool. One of the few cruise lines, out here on the West Coast. Holland America Line was founded in Rotterdam, Netherlands, and from 1873 to 1989, it operated as a Dutch shipping line, a passenger line, a cargo line, and a cruise line operating primarily between the Netherlands and North America. As part of the company's legacy, it was directly involved in the transport of many hundreds of thousands of immigrants from the Netherlands to North America. But Holland America, since 1989, has become part of a subsidiary of the Carnival Corporation, and they no longer do those transatlantic. Well, they do transatlantic cruises, but they are no longer just a primary line taking people back and forth between Europe and North America. They are now one of the major cruise lines that people sail on.
They are a premium cruise line like Disney and Celebrity, so they're in that same category versus the mass market / contemporary cruise line of the Carnival and Royal Caribbean and NCL. So I'm excited to talk about it today.
Well, let's jump into it. We'll let you introduce our guest, and I cannot wait to talk to her again.
So we have Debbie on with us today, and she is probably one of my longest standing clients, consecutive clients. I absolutely love working with Debbie, and I'm super excited because we have really not talked about her cruise. So I'm really excited to actually talk about it today too, because we haven't had a chance to really get into how her cruise went. So welcome to the show, Debbie. Welcome back.
Thank you, Christy.
Yeah, Debbie, it was a super fun doing this show, and I thought we'd touch on this real quick before we talk about this latest cruise. But I had a super fun time talking with you, and Dennis also joined me about your sailing on the Halcyon.
The single best Disney experience of my life. And I still feel that way. I've been following, all of the news and kind of the sadness of it closing.
You say single best. Why would you say single best experience with Disney? What made it best?
I think I don't think I ever realized how much I wanted to do that kind of an immersive experience. And because I'm not really a great Star Wars fan, as I indicated before, but it was just the best thing ever. I mean, you were so involved. You really felt like you were part of the story. So I hope that they find a way of making use of it again, because it was, did it cost a fortune? Absolutely. But it was worth every penny. I really loved it.
That episode was episode 310. So if listeners want to go to the website, DCLpodcast.com, you can actually do a search for either Halcyon or episode 310 and pull it up. It was fascinating for me to listen to, even not as a Star Wars person, because, I like seeing half of the episodes once. So I'm just not a Star Wars person. But it was your excitement over it made it a really enjoyable listen. So I would urge listeners, if they haven't listened to it yet, to go. And then Steve and I were talking before the show, there is rumors going around that maybe Disney will do a one-day Star Cruiser type situation. And so maybe if something like that occurs again, our listeners that haven't been able to experience, or the ones that want to do it again, might get an opportunity. So hopefully that can happen for you guys that really enjoy it.
Oh yeah, I would do that in a heartbeat.
Yeah, go over to Disney Dish with Len Testa and Jim Hill. They've been talking about it, and through some of the different feedback that Disney's been putting surveys out to people that have been on it. Have you got one of those surveys by any chance, Debbie?
No, I didn't. Maybe because I went so long ago now.
Okay.
It was a year and a half ago.
They have been putting out surveys, and just kind of the tone of it, that's where the speculation comes from, that maybe you could do a one-day experience. And I hope that they do that, because after listening to yours and several other people's experiences on it, I'd love to be able to do it at some point.
Yeah, because was just great.
Well, we're going to turn now to Holland America Line and talk about this cruise, which features Alaska, but it wasn't just a cruise itself. It was also a land vacation as well.
Yeah, it was I think it was 11 nights. And we started out in Fairbanks, where I had hoped to see Northern Lights, but we did have a pretty good amount of rain and clouds over the 11 days. So saw just a tiny, tiny bit of Northern Lights.
Well, let's touch on that quick. When did this cruise go?
September, I think I left September 3rd. So the trip itself started on the 6th because I wanted to acclimate to the time zone and went through the morning of the 17th.
Okay. And who went with you on this cruise?
I took a 23-year-old niece, which was kind of interesting for a Holland America cruise, or so I thought. I had these preconceived notions of Holland America. I thought, and I'm old or older, I thought most people would be with walkers, and really it wasn't that way. It was older, particularly for the land part. We laughed that my niece was the only person under 40, we think, during the land cruise or land part of the trip. And then there were more younger people afterwards. But yeah.
So just one thing to know about Alaska is, unfortunately, winter or the fall starts pretty early up there. So by the time you get into September, it can turn kind of overcast and rainy quite a bit. So the weather's always, iffy no matter where you go. But just kind of a heads up there for people traveling at that time. But it would be dark enough to see the Northern Lights if it was clear.
Right, because I had done considerable research. I put together a spreadsheet of all the cruise lines, because really I had two friends who wanted to go to Alaska. It was on their bucket list. It was not on mine, but I thought, hey, I haven't been to Alaska before, I'll go. So I put together a spreadsheet and compared all of the cruise lines. And of course, they wanted that land part. So that automatically eliminated quite a few cruise lines because they didn't offer that. And then I just assigned a point system based on reviews I read, and Holland America won my ratings.
I love that. I love a point system and a spreadsheet. And, back to the weather for a second, too. I know, listeners they have to figure out what their needs are or what their wishes are for Alaska. And actually, it's tricky because it's starting to be fall. But there should be some bear activities still in September. And that is late August into September is when you're going to see Northern Lights.
To me, it was like a balance, though, because I recognized what I would get by going in the summer. But Northern Lights, again, when I prioritized what I was hoping for, I was hoping to get the Northern Lights in, and I knew that was probably the best opportunity. The rain did not, even the gray skies, nothing ruined the trip. It didn't ruin it at all. I went with so much rain gear. I was out in the rain for hours the day of the Hubbard Glacier, which actually was one of the high points of the trip. So, yeah, I didn't let the rain bother me. I mean, I was soaking wet. It was only 2 days that it really rained. Otherwise, we had a little bit of drizzle now and then.
Is everybody else singing, "The rain never bothered me anyway"?
Let's run with that point there before we with that song there, before we get into your experiences. And I love the fact that we've got kind of two, your niece being 23 and you being a little older like myself. I appreciate we're going to be able to see that. But you've also been on a lot of Disney cruises. And was this your first Holland America cruise?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, okay. I've done 17 Disney, and this was the first Holland.
So I thought we touched just real quick on some of the differences that you notice between Holland America and Disney, whether quality of the food, the staffing, anything that kind of comes to mind.
Well, first, the room was really small, and that's probably my fault because my friends did want it to be, economical. The room it's much smaller than the family. It was a veranda room, but it was smaller than what is it called? The family veranda room.
Yeah, so the family veranda is the larger one, but then
then not that one.
It's just veranda.
Okay. Yeah, so it was smaller than that. So kind of around the room, oh boy, do you miss the split bathroom? Whether you have a 23-year-old or who you're with, you miss the split bathroom. It was a very nice sized bathroom. I was actually surprised it had a full-size bathtub in it. And I do like that the bed can be converted to twin beds. I like that an awful lot. And I know other cruise lines do that where Disney doesn't.
I'm pretty sure Disney's the only one that doesn't split a bed.
So I liked that because, I'm with my niece. So it is an older ship. The coloring, there was a lot of tan and brown and rust, but it seemed to be maintained very, very well. So, I had no objections to that at all. Food, not as good as Disney, not as good as Celebrity. I was really surprised because that was one place on my spreadsheet that they were winning. So I don't know what the story was. Their buffet, kind of the equivalent of Cabanas, was probably, other than no shrimp, because I haven't been on a cruise ship yet. They had that big pile of shrimp like Disney does, and I miss it. I go at the end of the month, can't wait because I get to get my shrimp again. The buffet was good. It had really good pasta bar, really good pizza. So no complaints about that, but the main dining room was disappointing. One other thing that I absolutely loved, they had a lounge up on the 10th deck at the front of the ship called Crow's Nest. And I felt like I was in a concierge lounge. It was so wonderful. And, just panoramic windows. It was outstanding. I was there. My niece and my friends both would joke, well, we know where she is. She's up in the Crow's Nest, because it's where I just would hang out constantly. And then the only other real comment, my niece felt that there weren't enough activities. But I think part of that too might be the time of year, the rain. I don't know. But I will tell you, there was a library on the ship. And I understand Holland has a library on almost every ship. And we really took advantage of it. I mean, it had brand new books. It didn't have, single copies of dog-eared books. It was 5 and 6 copies of new books. And she read 3 during the week on the cruise itself. And I read 2. So we felt we kind of made use of that. And they also had a really great game room full of just about every board game you could imagine. So there were some, fun opportunities.
So it sounds like they wanted you to make your own activities a little bit, like utilize these spaces and turn it into your own sort of entertainment.
That's probably a good point. I mean, she didn't say she was bored. She just wished there'd been more activities. I actually think there were more than she gave them credit for, though, too. Because I will admit, I was kind of dismayed. The hotel in Anchorage is a terrible hotel that Holland uses. Supposedly they're replacing it. That's the rumor. They would be well served to get rid of it. But I got on the cruise thinking, I'll probably never go on another Holland America because it's not Disney, it's not Celebrity. And I ended the week embracing it far more than I thought I would. And I would consider them again if the price was right.
What do you think made that shift?
I think that part of it was just the fatigue of the land part, because that is one thing. You are, the movie Trains, Planes, and Automobiles. That's what the first 5 days felt like, because we were constantly on the move. We picked a Denali, a double Denali, it was called. So I had 2 nights in Denali, not nearly enough time. They offer a triple Denali, and if I did it again, I would pick the triple. We never even got to the visitor center because we didn't really understand our available time. But we did see, you talk about wildlife. We saw grizzly bears, black bears, caribou, so many moose. And on the cruise, we saw sea otters and harbor seals. The only thing I didn't see whales. But again, it's the end of the season for whales. Kind of that was one of my trade-offs going in September.
This cruise, as we talked about, and we were kind of jumping over a little bit, but just to give it some context for everybody, you guys got to Fairbanks. You took a train to Denali for 2 days, then took a train to Anchorage, a train down to Whittier where you got on the cruise ship so everybody can follow along. And then from there, we'll go through the different ports once we get onto that part. I have never been to Denali, but I could see where 3 days would be better than spending time in Anchorage. I've been to Anchorage a lot, and no dissing on Anchorage for any of our fans from Anchorage, but there's just, if you're going to see the nature and the wildlife, that's the place to do it.
Oh, no, I agree. We were all newbies to this. So every moment was, something brand new for us to experience. And we were pretty unanimous. Yeah, Anchorage, we had too much time in Anchorage.
Did you tell them?
Yeah, I did the survey that they provided. And I liked their survey because it was, an email. And I had lots of room to write things.
You could give comments?
Yes.
What an idea.
I reached out to friends who always complain that there's no room on the Disney survey. And I said, you would be so delighted with the Holland survey.
I guess they are testing Disney survey through the app now instead of doing it on the piece of paper. So maybe you could actually give some more information. I'm not sure yet.
And that'd be nice because that was a good opportunity. I talked about the hotel. I talked about a lot of things. in the comments.
Well, let's go back to Denali real quick. So you spent 2 days there. Was it mostly group activities, or were you able to do a lot of things on your own? How was that structured?
Well, we really didn't have that long. We got there about probably 5 p.m. the first day, because they did take us to, as part of the trip up to Denali, we did a riverboat discovery in Fairbanks. It was an absolute wonderful trip. I mean, I couldn't get over it delayed our arrival in Denali, but it was a great excursion. So yes, they offer a tundra wilderness tour that goes up to mile marker 40 something, I think, where there was a landslide, and it's 5 or 6 hours. So that was done a group on a bus. Really wonderful. I mean, that's where we saw the grizzly bear. They had me so excited. I have a video of him standing up and scratching his back on a tree, and the mama moose with her baby crossing the road. And then we also, apparently only about 30% of the time can you see the actual mountain of Denali. And we did get to see all of Denali. So that was a day that was clear. Very pretty day. We did walk around the resort, because you stay in a Holland America resort called McKinley Chalet Lodge Resort. Yeah, something. And then the Princess Resort is right next door within walking distance. They were wonderful. Either our room was just remodeled, or they're simply wonderful resorts. And they're just outside the gate to the national park. So they were great. We did a lot of walking around. My niece wanted to do the kind of hokey dinner show they had there, and we did that. It was called Music of Denali. She said it reminded her a lot of Disney shows, which it did. There were free shuttles to the national park if you wanted to do those rather than the tundra tour that they gave us. But then we got up the next morning after the one day and left. So it was really one day. It's 2 nights, but it was one day. That's why I know I would do a 3-day.
Yeah. That makes sense.
But I go back to Denali. My niece, who has a very good job, was ready to give up her career and go to work as a tour guide in Denali because she liked it so much. That was her favorite part.
It is beautiful. We've flown past it going between Anchorage and Fairbanks, and it's the largest U.S. mountain. I think it's the largest U.S. mountain in North America. Yeah, it's just spectacular. So I'm glad you were able to see that. How was the food? Was the food included with this land tour?
No, food was not included. You could pay what I considered an astronomical amount of money to get a few meals. So we did eat at the Princess Lodge one night. And then we also, across the street, there were a number of little shops and cafes. And we ate over there. Yeah, there were a lot of choices within walking distance.
Well, that's good to know.
But we really loved, I would have gladly welcomed an additional day in Denali.
And then after Denali, that's when you took the train that you said was absolutely stunning. Was that it to Whittier?
Yeah, we went down to Anchorage. And then from Anchorage, we took the train, and that train was about 2 hours long, and the scenery was breathtaking. That train was my favorite, I think, because it was shorter, because we spent almost 12 hours on that first train from Fairbanks. It was long, or Denali down to Anchorage. It was because we had to sit for the 2.5 hours waiting for the northbound trains. Because it was getting close to the end of the season, they said they're concerned. All of the mountains were snow covered, and they said that had just occurred in the last 2 to 3 days. So another good reason, I guess, to go the time of year we did, because snow-covered mountains are beautiful. It's kind of what you want to see. So yeah, there were give and takes both ways. But yeah, the train down to Whittier was unbelievably beautiful.
From the train down to Whittier, then, did you get on the cruise that day, or did you spend some time in Whittier?
No. We did get on the train. It was, or on the cruise. It was almost immediate. And that was really handled well. We thought that some of the information on the land package had not been really adequately described to us, or we didn't feel informed. But they did a great job getting us onto the cruise ship. It took minutes. That's
awesome. So for the cruise, for perspective there, you guys are going to leave Whittier. You're going to go to Hubbard Glacier, which is Nova's favorite place. And from what I've heard, is probably the largest glacier that you can see cruising Alaska. Just a spectacular glacier. From there down to Skagway, Juneau, Ketchikan, Vancouver, and then it ends in Vancouver.
Yeah. Well, after Hubbard, we did Glacier Bay National Park.
Oops, I'm sorry. I missed that one too.
Yeah. But that one was probably one of the most important things to us when I did that spreadsheet, because very few ships get to go into Glacier Bay. Holland brought 2 park rangers on, and they were constantly informing us about what we were seeing, where we were going. And Hubbard, a Princess ship, was beside us, and it went pretty close to the glacier. But my niece and I took a catamaran they offered, just one catamaran, the only excursion from Hubbard. And it did pour rain all day, but it was so unbelievable to get that close to the Hubbard Glacier. It was a wonderful experience. She was outside the whole time. I was outside the whole time. They hauled up a big piece of the ice and handed it to us. And then they gave her chunks of ice that she could bite on, which had her thrilled. So yeah, the Hubbard Glacier and the Glacier Bay were two stops that were important to me to make sure they were included in whatever cruise I picked. And Glacier Bay we went to probably 5 or 6 different glaciers. And it was just a beautiful day. And, the ship moves slowly, so it's peaceful. And that's where we saw the cute, adorable little sea otters floating by on their backs with their little feet flipping around in the air. And then 2 harbor seals on a floating piece of ice. Yeah, it was really wonderful. And then we got to where we went to the cities, to the towns.
Mm-hmm. Where you went to Skagway, Juneau, Ketchikan, and then cruising the inside passage back to Vancouver.
Yeah.
So you talked about the park rangers that came on prior to Glacier Bay. Were they on before you guys actually got to Hubbard or Glacier Bay so that they could give presentations so people knew kind of what to expect?
Yeah, they came on very early, and then they stayed the entire day. I think they disembarked the ship around 6:30 at night. And they gave presentations during the day. Before we got to Hubbard Glacier, they were informing us, because I was up in the crow's nest. They were giving their presentations up in that lounge. They, told us what we were going to see, where we were going. They had, big maps posted so that we could understand it. And they also brought on somebody from the Alaska Geographic Society who was selling wonderful books and pins and hats and things that were all from Glacier Bay National Park. And they did mention that being on a cruise is one of the only ways you can get into Glacier Bay. So they made sure they gave us the stamp for the park, which was important to my niece because she collects national park stamps. And I'm certainly not going to go trekking for hours to get into Glacier Bay. So this was definitely the only way I would have made it.
I love the fact that they come on and do that because to your point, I think that's a big reason why a lot of people book a cruise to Glacier Bay is because it's the only way to get to that national park.
Mm-hmm. Well, as I said, it was one of the important considerations for me. That earned more points on my spreadsheet than nearly anything.
So you talked about the crow's nest, but you also talked about being out in the rain. As far as the ship goes, we didn't really talk about this, but you were in the Nordam.
Yes.
From what I can tell, it's roughly about the same size as like the Wonder, maybe a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller.
I think it was 32 feet smaller because I did look it up and it's somewhere in that neighborhood because I said I felt it was the size of those ships. But my friends who have also gone on a lot of Disney cruises said, no, this is bigger. I'm like, no. So yeah, 32 feet smaller, about the same width. I think it was 26 feet wide.
Okay. So besides the crow's nest, were there plenty of places to go to be able to, take in the glaciers up on top, or you said you were out in the rain quite a bit?
Well, on the days that we went into the glaciers, they opened all of the bows. And I didn't realize that that's more than just that big pointy front bow. They open it on every level. So even though our room or our cabin was on deck 6, I was able to go out into the bow area on deck 6 and have it be just mine. I was the only person out there the day we went through Glacier Bay. So, and I was able to watch everybody on the lower big bow, and they were serving soup and cocoa, and not up on my deck 6. So they were making it fun for people too, who were there, doing a lot of photos. But yeah, so you had plenty of places. If you wanted to be inside, you were at the crow's nest. If you wanted to be outside the day of Glacier Bay, they provided all kinds of additional access on the front of the ship.
That's terrific.
That sounds wonderful for you, Christy. Someplace where you're not crammed in with a lot of people, huh?
I know. I was totally thinking I might trade off. I would trade off the hot cocoa and the soup to be on my own little balcony.
I felt that way. And it was probably close to about 130 degrees. So I had a pretty far-reaching vista that I could wander from side to side on my deck 6.
And you could hear the presentations?
Yes. Yeah, they were piping that to every deck.
That's so cool.
Did they have any excursions at all, would you know, in Glacier Bay for people to go and do?
No, they had none in Glacier Bay.
Or nothing for
the only one on the 2 sea days, if you want to call it that, or water days, the only excursion they had either day was the catamaran in Hubbard Bay. or Hubbard Glacier. And that's why I booked it. I booked it as soon as I read about it because it's a maximum of 150 people that can go on that out of everybody that's on the cruise ship.
And so that got you close to the glacier and everything else.
Oh yeah, very close.
Yeah, that's amazing. Would you recommend that for people?
Oh, I would. I mean, even in the kind of less than stellar weather that we had the day in Hubbard, I'd recommend it almost as a priority if you can get it.
Yeah.
A lot of people stayed inside, but knowing that our ship didn't come close. Princess ship got closer than the Holland America ship, but still nowhere near as close as we were able to get. And they did have a tour guide there also explaining what we were seeing as we went through Hubbard.
So this would be similar to the Glacier Explorer that Disney Cruise Line offers and Holland America, Norwegian Cruise Line offers something like that as well. I think it's like the exact same excursion.
Okay.
To when you are going through either Tracy Arm or whatever glacier path they're taking for that day.
To your point as well, Debbie, I think if you are cruising, no matter what cruise line you're going, and if there's something that interests you to get that close, make sure you book it right ahead, because that was the one thing on our cruise too in Norwegian that booked up right away and was sold out.
Oh yeah, I stayed on top of things like that. I wanted to make sure I got the excursions that were important to me.
Well, let's move to the ports then. You hit some typical ports, the ones that those on the Wonder will recognize. You start off in Skagway, Juneau, Ketchikan, then back to Vancouver. You get to cruise to the Inside Passage, which is amazing. We didn't do that this year on our cruise, but what did you have planned in Skagway? What did you guys do there?
In Skagway, we went to a musher's camp. We got to ride the summer sled with the 14 dogs pulling us. And it was a real musher. I thought for sure it'd be a tourist attraction, and it is. But they bring in real mushers. So this guy's from Fairbanks, and he does the Iditarod every year. So it was a lot of fun to have him telling us about his dogs. We met the individual dogs, and yeah, it was, and there were puppies, brand new puppies, which had my niece just tickled because we could hold the puppies. So that's what we did there, and then just shopped in town.
I've heard really good things about the Skagway dog sled excursion, whereas the one that we did in Skagway, right? I did it in Skagway. I think so. Yeah. Where we took the helicopter. Ours was on a glacier, super cool, but everybody sort of, it seemed, that was working came in for the summer to work on this glacier. I don't think they were not. There must have been somebody maybe more trained to work with the dogs, but the people facing individuals were not mushers. And so it was a super cool experience. And to actually go on the snow with a sled dog, and my son could control it and things. I have heard really good things about the summer camp that is offered at Skagway.
Yeah, and I that was important to me because certainly in Denali, almost everybody you met came in from somewhere else to spend the summer. And to have a real musher who races the Iditarod was pretty special. He didn't have the greatest personality, but he didn't have to because that's what he does for a living. And he loved his dogs and, loved what he does.
So you got an authentic view of what it's like to be a musher up in Alaska, and the temperament it takes to do that. So,
yeah. I mean, it was very cool.
What did you think of the little town of Skagway? So walkable, obviously, from the ship, and a lot of things to see and do in there.
Yeah, the 23-year-old niece again. We went on a celebrity cruise in the Mediterranean 2 years ago, and we got lost in Positano and missed our bus back to the ship. So that left a pretty strong memory of, can we find the ship when it's time to go back? And she turned around on the street in Skagway and said, we're not going to miss the ship this time, because it was parked right there at the end of the street. So it was just, we had to chuckle a little bit about that at least we weren't going to get lost like we did in Positano. It was a cute little town. We enjoyed it. We went to I think it's called the Red Onion. It's supposed to have been a brothel at one time. Sits around the corner. And we did the tour of the upstairs where the ladies conducted their work. And it was a lot of fun. It was cute.
The Red Onion Saloon, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So we enjoyed it.
A lot of brothels up there back in the day, Christy.
Yeah, those gold miners.
Anything else about Skagway before we turn to the capital of Alaska, Juneau?
No, I mean, it was interesting to hear about the people who live there. Like, we heard that there were no doctors there was an urgent care with a physician assistant, and otherwise they have to fly to get to a hospital. And a head of lettuce costs $8. That's what really makes you appreciate what we have where we live, what they have to endure by choosing to live in Alaska.
I know a lot of the locals jump on the Alaska State Ferry line and they'll go from Skagway down to Juneau to do their shopping because it's so expensive.
Yeah, it's crazy. The different people would tell us about the challenges, but they accept them because that's where they want to live. And I'll take Pennsylvania, I guess, over Alaska. I couldn't live there. I couldn't.
Beautiful to visit, but I'm with you there too. So, all right. So from there, you guys head down to Juneau, the capital of Alaska, a little bit bigger town, city. What did you guys have planned there?
Well, we had planned to do one of the last whale watching tours. I had my fingers crossed. I've done whale watching before in Hawaii, so I've seen them at the other end of their migration. That was really the only really pouring day. Mm-hmm. So we got off the ship. We were still convinced we might be going. And there was a guy there, and they announced that all of the tours were closed. But he was offering, and it was actually sponsored by Holland America. So it wasn't some sleazy guy standing on the street corner selling a tour. But we went to the last indoor gold mine in Alaska. It's no longer operating, but it has a lot of the equipment inside. And my niece, apparently my brother wants to pan for gold more than anything in the world. That's his vision of his retirement, is gold panning. So she was tickled. We had done some fake gold panning in Fairbanks, but she was tickled to be inside an actual gold mine in Juneau. So we enjoyed it quite a bit. It was kind of ugly weather again, and then we went to one of the restaurants for crab legs, which I know this was not a good season for king crab. I don't even think they held the season this year. We did get some crab in one of the restaurants in Juneau. Do
you remember which one it was? Just out of curiosity.
No, I don't.
A lot of good little spots right there along the water to get crab.
Well, this was along the water. But I don't remember the name. We just happened to walk upon it after buying T-shirts and said, okay, let's go in here. We'll get some crab, just because I wanted to make sure I got some somewhere.
Perfect. Do you know, did they have a shuttle? Because for us, we parked pretty ways away from downtown. Did they run a shuttle for you guys? Were you guys close enough to town?
We actually were close enough. We walked back. They had run a shuttle, but you didn't need it. We were one of the closest ships. We had a really good spot.
Those Norwegian cruise lines. Out there in the hinterland.
This is the difference.
No, I saw the Norwegian ship, and my niece, when we were pulling in, she says, oh, look where that ship is. Why do they get to park there? I said, well, just hang on. Wait a minute. And then when we pulled in, I said, well, we're right in town. So, yeah, Norwegian was way out.
Learn your lesson, right? A little bit. But no, it was a great sailing, but there are some different differences there. So I did notice that Holland America and Princess were generally right downtown, which I like that.
They did have a little shuttle, but we didn't need it.
Well, from Juneau, you head to rainy Juneau. You head to one of the rainiest towns in America, Ketchikan.
And we had beautiful weather.
Figures, right?
It did rain before we were able to get off, and it was pouring. It was coming down sideways, and I thought, okay, here we go, another day of rain. And because we didn't have an excursion for Ketchikan, because I was determined to walk up to the fish ladder and to go to Creek Street. Those were, and I knew there was a quilting shop there. So right before we got off the ship, the sun came out, and it was gorgeous. It was absolutely gorgeous. It had to be mid-60s. You couldn't have asked for a prettier day. And I love Ketchikan. That was my favorite of the 3 stops. I just loved it.
Did you get to your quilting store?
I did. I bought some fabric that was printed with kind of indigenous Alaskan images. And also bought some yarn that was made in Alaska. So I was very happy. And then the woman who owns the store, she sits right at the edge of Creek Street. Kind of if we're pointing toward Creek Street's off to the right, and the fish ladder is off to the left. So I did see one salmon on the fish ladder. I knew it was also the end of the salmon season, but lots of salmon in the water. And then there were sea lions feeding on the salmon.
Oh my God.
In the water.
That would be so cool to see.
Yeah, it was very nice. And I thought I had seen so many pictures of Creek Street. So I had pretty high expectations for it, but it exceeded my expectations. It was as charming as I wanted it to be. And, for shoppers, the shopping was great. And that was something that surprised me, how reasonable the prices were.
Mm-hmm.
Because if, a head of lettuce is $8, I thought things would be terribly expensive. And really, no, things were very reasonable.
I think the cool thing about Creek Street, too, is I think there are more little mom and pop places versus because we got a kind of a cool candle from this lady that made the candles there, and rather than the giant tourist shops that you'll see maybe down on the waterfront in Ketchikan.
No, I think that's a good point because I bought several handmade items over on Creek Street. And in one of the stores, I bought this Alaskan Eskimo doll, not really a doll, but kind of. And the girl at the checkout explained every nuance of that to me, how the face had been made, what kind of wood it was. And she was just stroking the face on the doll. And I thought, that's the kind of thing you don't get in a big tourist shop. She was so proud of what she was selling. And I bought a jar of cranberry jelly. I like cranberries. So the woman got out a book to show me all of the native berries of Alaska and explain that this cranberry was going to taste very different and how it would taste. And she didn't want me to think that it was bad. So yeah, you're right. I love to talk to people when I go places. And every shop was just wonderful. They took the time to talk to you, where you were from, what you were buying. Yeah, it was delightful.
Well, from Ketchikan you leave and you guys get to tour the Inside Passage for a day. What was that? Had you been through there before? I didn't even really ask you this. Is this your first time to Alaska?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even ask that from the beginning. So this is totally amazing. So what did you think of the Inside Passage? How was that day?
Oh, I loved it. Again, I was sitting in the crow's nest most of the time because I had that opportunity to just watch every minute of the trip through the Inside Passage. My friends and my niece didn't. They were in the cabin and they were, off doing things, but I just reveled in every minute because the scenery changed, I swear every 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't see any wildlife. No, I don't think I saw any wildlife that day, but I thoroughly enjoyed it because you talk about a peaceful, restful day. Just sitting there enjoying the, glass of wine sitting beside me, I was quite content. And I think that's part of another reason why I ended up liking Holland America. I like vacations. Well, I like both. I like them to be constantly moving like the Galactic Star Cruiser was, but I also like ones that are just peaceful, restful, and lazy. Having that library there, the game room, and then that crow's nest. I wouldn't want to be sitting in the crow's nest in the Caribbean. Certainly. But for Alaska, I think it was well suited.
What a perfect way to end it, too. Such a busy, beginning to your cruise, the land portion, and then all the stops through the different towns. But a nice, peaceful, restful days you went through the Inside Passage down to Vancouver.
Yeah. And, if you ask for a recommendation, I think doing the land part first does make more sense.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine doing it after the cruise and suddenly having all that hectic moving around and packing up of suitcases.
I've definitely seen the people up in Anchorage as they're finishing up after their trip from their cruise and whatnot, and they definitely look really tired. So,
I had a question really quick because you guys had the Have It All package with Holland America, right? Which includes the specialty dining. It includes, I think, like $100 off a shore excursion, and then the drink package and basic Wi-Fi. So how would you say the Wi-Fi worked? I know you and I emailed back a couple of times, different things. Oh, I think we talked about the Treasure and possibly another cruise you had going on. Were you using the standard Wi-Fi that was included, or did you have to upgrade it?
I used premium. I bought the premium Wi-Fi, but Kendall, my niece, used the basic. I offered to trade with her if she had any issues with it because I knew her internet needs were probably far greater than mine. We both had outstanding internet.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I could have stayed with the basic. I even joked with her. I said, this was the best internet I've had on any ship. We think Celebrity has pretty good internet, or that's what we
usually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but this was great. And, we were in an isolated part of the world. So I was very pleased with the internet. Drink package, of course, was okay. The food, I thought, in fact, my two friends said, you have to get Disney out of your mind because I thought the signature dining or whatever they call it, I thought it would be wonderful like Palo, and it wasn't. I didn't think the food was all that great there either. They let me down with food. Not terrible, but it wasn't as good as I expected. And I mean, they're probably right. I expected it to be Palo. It wasn't. It was like being in any restaurant at home, nothing remarkable, or at least that was my opinion.
Well, that's too bad about I do have one question about how did the dining work? Did you have to pick a certain time? Could you just go whenever you wanted? How did that work on Holland America?
Both. And I'm glad you asked that because that's something that I like better than Disney. We had a set time. I think it was 7:30. At least 3 of the nights we decided to eat the minute they opened. I think it was 6 or maybe it was 5. And we had that opportunity. Well, they had 2 levels in their main dining room. One level was, anytime dining. One level was scheduled dining. And you could flip-flop between them. And I really liked that we had that opportunity to be able to go back and forth to whatever suited us.
Yeah, that's nice. And their buffet, I assume, was open in the evening as well.
It was, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Disney,
are you hearing that?
Yeah. And they often had they had an Alaska bake or a salmon bake one night. They had a seafood boil one night in the buffet, and they did a special steak night because my friends did the steak night and they enjoyed it a lot. So that was kind of cool too, that there were special features.
Yeah, that's really nice.
I'm starting to think what Disney really needs to do is like say on the Wish, let's keep Arendelle and Marvel that, time dining for those families that need that time dining. And the anytime for the other guests can go over to 1923. Let's just mix it up a little bit. What do you think, Christy?
Yeah.
No, because everybody would be at 1923 the whole time and there would be nobody at any other restaurant because 1923 is the best.
I do you have an opinion if I threw that out there?
Yeah, the early dining is way too early for me on dining, and the late dining is late.
It is. And we all know why Disney does it because it's a great product as far as, being able to do the experiences that they have at the dining and whatnot. Yeah. But I'm with you. I wish there was a better option for those nights, especially like if you're on a 7-night cruise where you could mix it up and say, you know what, we're going to eat a little early or a little later.
Open up buffet dining again on the middle nights of the cruise like you used to have. So you're selling the ships. They're oversold. Give people another opportunity to eat instead of only offering them, I don't know, pizza at whatever hour. Everything closes at 6. You're literally forced to go to either order room service or to go to your set dining times. And I think that they need to compete a little bit again.
I'd love it if they'd revisit that.
No, I agree completely. Because that was one of the enjoyable aspects of the trip, that we didn't have to wait until 7:30.
You had choices.
Yeah. And good choices. I mean, even though the food's not as good as Disney, it's still decent.
So before we finish up with this cruise topic, I want to just say what you said your niece didn't think there was as many activities. For a 23-year-old on board, what were some of the things that she did do that she enjoyed?
She didn't do much except read books.
Okay.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
No, there isn't. Because we both compete on Goodreads to see how many books we're reading. So, and we read one book together and it was a race to see who would finish it. But I don't think she really availed herself of choices that were there, to be fair. I think there were, when you would read, and they still give you a printed navigator or whatever they call it, which was kind of nice. And they had a lot of activities that she could have done. Because certainly on Celebrity, we went to origami. She didn't want to do origami on this ship. So, there were things that she could have done. I just found that being lazy and sitting in the crow's nest was my preferred activity. Could have been there pretty much all 7 days if we hadn't had excursions.
Nothing wrong with that. And then one last question. Did they have entertainment? What kind of entertainment did they have in the evening? Did they have live music or some performers?
Yeah, they had a lot of, of course, there was trivia because I went to every trivia that they had. They don't get prizes, though. Not even, I don't care if it's just a hokey little plastic, whatever, no prizes. But they had music, they had dancers, and the musicians were certainly fine. Kind of a nice change from, that big Broadway style show that we're all used to on Disney, even though I love them.
So did they have an evening show time?
Yeah.
Like, did they?
Yeah. Okay. They offered it twice around, like an early dining or a late dining. Mm-hmm. And there were bars where there were, you had live musical entertainment. So there was quite a bit of that. Certainly skewed more to an older group of people. It was enjoyable.
There is a colleague of mine from Michigan that cruises with her family with 2 young kids every year. They've been doing it since her kids were infants. So it's sort of like they look at Holland like I look at Celebrity as their cruise for their family. They are, I think, maybe a couple years younger than I am. And then obviously their kids are younger as well. So I do know of people that really enjoy the kids club and the offerings that they have for that. If people are interested in that cruise line, obviously it's a situation sort of like, well, like Celebrity, that is more of an adult cruise line that has programming for kids. Like, I don't necessarily want to word it that way. And they have a kids menu, but it's not necessarily a kids menu that you can even color on, right? It's just like a menu that gives you your food options, and there's not going to be entertainment at your meals, but not everybody needs that or wants that. So it is nice to know there's other opportunities and yet other cruise lines that can still entertain the kids.
Yeah, and that's what I had read beforehand too, that the kids clubs actually receive pretty well. Because it was surprising for me to read. Again, not knowing anything about Holland America.
Debbie, where did you do the research, or how did you do the research on Holland America and for Alaska?
Every Facebook page I could find, I signed up for every Alaska cruise or Holland Princess, because I kind of had it narrowed down to Holland and Princess when I knew Glacier Bay. So first I narrowed it down, but it was searching on Google. It was on Pinterest. It was reading countless articles about it. I mean, I have a full Pinterest page on recommendations for Alaska. And now I finally was able to get out of all those Facebook pages because I don't need them anymore. But yeah, I did a lot of research, but it was almost all online.
Do you think you'll go back on an Alaskan cruise?
No. And not because I didn't like it. It's just too far for me to travel. It took us 24 hours to get there with we had 3 planes. Took almost 24 to get home. And then you have that red-eye flight at night. So it's more the travel logistics that would keep me from wanting to go back.
But you go to Europe and it takes probably 24 hours to get home from Europe.
No,
but Europe is amazing, right?
Yeah, it just felt like too far. Although the niece really, really wants to go for a week in the winter so that we can see
there are some
northern lights. And we had a tour guide in Fairbanks for one of the tours we did by ourselves. And he was a native person and he does polar bear tours because he lives in Barrow. So she says, we're going to go see Daniel and we're going to get Daniel to give us a polar bear tour. I'm like, okay.
That is so cool. Well, I hope you do it. And there are tours, if you wanted to do a structured tour that does winter tours in Alaska. I know that some agents from my agency went and were like hosted, and the pictures were amazing.
That's what we heard from a lot of people in Fairbanks, that if you really want to see Alaska, come in the winter.
And it's not necessarily colder than it is in Pennsylvania. So, because it's more temperate. Yeah,
they have some days where they get to 50 below actual air temperature, but those are few far and in between. There are not many of them. So I told her if she can line it up, maybe not this winter, but I'll go up for a few, because then you're almost guaranteed to see the northern lights because it's colder and you have clear skies. Yeah.
You know, another place where you could go and see them is Iceland, which might be easier to get to for you from Pennsylvania. Just
it probably would be. I do have several Facebook groups for Northern Lights, and they're always posting Norway, Finland, Iceland.
So just another option to throw out there.
Yeah.
Steve, do you get to see Northern Lights when you take your flights north?
I don't go north very often. So, and then just going across, they came down where people could see up here in the Northwest last year for some reason, but that's pretty rare. Usually you got to go further north.
Is it because the plane you fly doesn't typically go there?
Yeah, just the routes I fly just don't go there. So, well, Debbie, what an amazing trip. I'm so glad that you and your niece were able to go up here and spend some time in Alaska. Was there anything that we didn't talk about or touch on that you can think of?
Yes. One of my absolute favorite parts of the cruise, and this is going to sound really silly, was their laundry service. We didn't want to pack for 2 weeks. So with the land part first, we knew we had 6 days that we had to pack for. So we bought the unlimited laundry package on Holland. It was $49.
Wow.
And we sent probably 10 bags of laundry over the 7-day cruise because we had all the dirty clothes from the start. We made sure we didn't go home with dirty clothes. And they returned the clothes, either if they were hanging, they had them hanging in a garment bag, ironed, beautiful. And the folded clothes were folded so neatly, and they were in a wicker basket and wrapped with tissue paper. And I thought that was the best $49 I have ever spent in my life. Now, I've never taken advantage of Disney laundry service, so I don't know if they return it the same way, but it was so beautifully done. And we even had thank you notes for having them do our laundry. I'm like, oh, and that's another point, I guess, too, is the crew was outstanding.
Oh, good.
So I did not see, it's not like, well, the Holland crews are not as good as Disney. They were every bit as good. I mean, I was very, very excited about almost every person I met. They were personable. They took the time with you. So once again, the crew was exemplary.
I think that everybody who does laundry on Disney cruise ships is like right now going, please give us the $49 because I would pay that in a heartbeat for these.
Because, right? Aren't you thinking too, like with Disney, you'd get like 5 pieces of laundry for $49. It might not be that bad, but it's not good.
I could not believe it. I really thought, well, are they going to lose my laundry? How is it going to come back? Is it going to come back crammed in the same bag? And no, folded beautifully with a thank you note and wrapped in tissue paper.
How long did it take?
One day to the next. So you had it back the next day.
Leslie was talking on the Disney Deciphered about her celebrity cruise and how it took like 3 days to get their laundry back. Now, I have sent out laundry on Celebrity. I think that I was in their suite level when I did it. And so I don't know if that made a difference, but it definitely didn't take that long to get my laundry back. But that would be something to keep in mind. But oh my God, $49 and it took the next day. I love the idea of like being able to send it out and coming back with clean clothes that I don't have to go spend the day in the laundry room for, because I am not doing that. There's all these people that are like on their cruise and they're like, I'm going to come home with clean laundry. Okay, good for you. But that is never going to be me unless I absolutely don't have any clean underwear at home.
Yeah, they don't have any self laundry, but they don't need it for $49.
$49.
I sent my winter coat because I thought, hey, I might as well go home with a clean winter coat. I won't wear it for several months. Yeah, that was really, really great.
I love
That's
it.
awesome.
Well, Debbie, as we finish up, obviously you're no stranger to travel. What's next for you?
A Halloween cruise out of New York City on the Disney Dream.
Oh, wow. That's coming up fast.
Yes. Yeah, October 27th is when we go. It's Bermuda. And it was really just that I go to New York a lot because I'm very close. And the idea of being able to sail out of New York is just very exciting to me.
I can't wait to see those pictures.
Yes, I've got my costumes. I'm getting them ironed and ready because I do love getting dressed up.
Please, when you come back, send us some pictures. And if we can get together and talk about it, I'd love to do it, because please go listen to Debbie's Halcyon sailing and check out the pictures there, because your costumes are amazing. I can't wait. Don't spoil it. Don't tell us what you're going to dress up as, but I can't wait to see what you dress up for Halloween.
Is it a different costume than you've done before?
Because but it's not the one that I've done recently. The last time we did these costumes was 2016.
Okay, so before my time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, all right, I want to see it. They had the most like stellar fairies. Who was it? Who was the one?
Well, I have a fairy godmother costume. That's the one I'm not doing.
Yeah. And then you matched it with your friend. And then did you have a blow up doll or something for the
Well, that's what we're doing this cruise. We're doing the 3 fairies from Sleeping Beauty again. But my friend will be Fauna and I'll be Merryweather, and we don't have a Flora. So yes, that's our little, we have a blow up doll named Judy.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. It's not, typical Disney. But we are all in costumes for the 3 fairies from Sleeping Beauty.
Oh my God, I love it. I can't wait to see the pictures again. Yes, please do.
Yeah, and the last time we did that was 2016, because we won the most original award on the ship that year. Because people couldn't, earlier in the evening, they were asking us, well, where's Flora? And well, Flora's back in the room. She can't come out yet. So then we went to the party with a blow up doll.
That's perfect. I love it. Well, Debbie, once again, just a joy to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming back on our show and gracing our listeners with your experiences up in Alaska. I want to wish you all the best as you sail out of New York. What an iconic sailing on the beautiful Disney Dream, and just have a wonderful Halloween season.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Christy, any final thoughts as we get out of here?
I don't think so. I really enjoyed this.
So did I. Well, once again, everybody, thanks for coming back and taking a listen, and hope you enjoyed this show about Debbie's trip to Alaska, and we'll see you next time on the DCL podcast. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Well, that's going to wrap up our show. Once again, we want to thank Debbie for coming on and sharing her adventures to Alaska on Holland America. If you are enjoying the show, we greatly appreciate you leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We would also like to thank our Patreons who make this show happen each and every week for us. You too can help support the show by joining our community by visiting patreon.com/DCL Podcast. Whether you are boarding a cruise, enjoying a trip to the parks, or adventuring outside of Disney, on behalf of myself, Steve, Christy, and Nova, we want to wish you smooth sailing and safe travels. And we'll see you next time on the DCL Podcast.
The DCL Podcast is not affiliated with the Disney Cruise Line, Walt Disney Company, Adventures by Disney, or Run Disney. All of the opinions expressed on our shows are those of the hosts and the guests who appear on the show. If you have any questions about any of these products, please contact the Walt Disney Company.